Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's training industry webinar, L&D Trends for 2026, Building Learning Velocity in the Age of AI. So I'm Liz Spate, the Events Marketing Specialist here at Training Industry, and I'm thrilled to have you with us here today. Before we get started, though, I would quickly like to go over a few housekeeping items to help you interact with our speaker and get the most out of today's program. So it looks like you guys have already been in the chat, but if you haven't, open up those chat windows and let us know where you're joining us from today. As mentioned, it is a cloudy day here in Raleigh, North Carolina, but it is a pleasure to have you with us here today. Feel free to keep this chat window open to interact with our speaker with any comments as well as questions. Our speaker, Matt, will be moderating the chat for questions, so do not hesitate to keep that chat window open to further that discussion. And we would also love to hear about what you've learned from today's session on social media, so please follow GP Strategies and hashtag TI webinars as you share your favorite takeaways with your colleagues. And when this webinar ends, you should receive a short evaluation survey. We always welcome your feedback on things like the content, speakers, topics, or anything else you would like to share with us, so be sure to complete that survey after the event. And as always, today's webinar will be recorded and archived on trainingindustry.com, and you will receive a follow-up email from us that will include the link to the on-demand program for you to share with your team. And if you've attended one of our programs in the past, thank you so much for joining us again. But if this is your first webinar with us, welcome. At Training Industry, we offer dozens of webinars with subjects ranging from AI, analytics, to onboarding, upskilling, and reskilling. We cover about every topic relevant to training leaders around the globe. And now, without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce you to Matt Donovan as GP Strategies Chief Learning and Initiative Officer. Brings more than 25 years of experience. Throughout his career, he has helped support a wide range of global Fortune 500 companies through significant transformation initiatives, and not only has been recognized through industry awards, his articles are regularly published and presented at a variety of national and international conferences. So with that, Matt, take it away.
All right, fantastic. So happy to be here with everybody today. Let's see, should be able to see my screen here in a second. Always love it when the technology works so well. That's the idea. Thank you for the thumbs up. I love that. So I've been doing these sessions where we take a look at the L&D trends each of the years. I've been doing this for several years, and I'm going to tell you, this year is no different in the sense that it's a heavy mix with a lot of disruption, a lot of change. I think one of the elements that we're really going to be looking at is there are some similar themes here, but it's the evolution and the iteration on that around that. So it'll be definitely some new. It'll be some push and evolution from some of the old, and hopefully even something a little bit further out there to kind of give you something to kind of dream about down the road, even beyond just 2026 with that. So it has been I'm telling you, it has started off the year so crazy, so many new announcements. It's like if you listen to even just AI and all the new releases that are coming out, all of the jockeying and the positioning amongst the big developers of the large language models, it's just wait a day and something new comes out. And it all filters down into what we're working on and what we're experiencing here, as our goal is to really help organizations shift to beginning to really adopt AI in that way. I'm myself, Matt Donovan. Thank you for that great introduction. Real quick, I did just want to get you a little bit of background on who I am. So if you don't know me, when I talk about this, what's my perspective? Where am I kind of coming from? I am a human-centric design enthusiast. I've been in the L&D space for over 25 years, but I do count myself as a recovering instructional designer. And I think that holds more true than ever as we start to move into rethinking the way that we tackle the way we do our work, our business as learning and development professionals within that. So we're going to jump on in, but I want to say, if you haven't had a chance, please reach out to me. Would love to continue the conversation out in the network as well. So, all right, so let's jump in. We're going to cover 7 trends today. It is a lot about trying to move us closer to enabling organizations to really think about how we're going to implement AI. That's probably one of the biggest things with that. And so it just, like so many other things, there's a skilling element, a learning element to it. It definitely falls into our area. What's exciting to me is that this really is, I think, the L&D organization's opportunity to really go in and deliver value for the organization, because this really is our sweet spot. When it calls about helping humans become the humans we need them to be in the future work environment, that's really our sweet spot around that. So I'm really excited to see a lot of things coming through. So we're going to walk through each of these trends as we're going. I will have the chat window up. If you have questions as we're going, please feel free to share those as we go. I'll try and monitor them as we're going. All right, so let's jump in real quick. As a matter of fact, let's try the chat out. I would just real quickly, if you could pop in, where are you in your personal AI journey and or your organization? Just go ahead and share those. Make sure we have in here just real quick. If you're just starting on one side, or you've been experimenting a lot, or you're really re-engineering the way you're doing work, bringing agents and apps into what you're doing. Love to see where you guys are just starting earlier in the Copilot, early adopter of AI. Great. Love to see that. Daily user. That's fantastic. So all in, experimenting and try to lead with example. That's going to be one of the great things, is that it's hard to actually reinforce and grow and develop if you're not using these things yourself. So fantastic. Currently using it when we are building e-learning trainings. What a great application for it. Researching workflows. So these are great applications. You can kind of see they kind of fall along that continuum. One of the key takeaways that I really want to really talk about, and we're going to talk about several trends as we're coming through, but there's an underlying theme that really sets, I think, 2026 apart. So in this evolution or journey towards the adoption of AI, it really is starting to show, and there's a lot of pressure to be able to show a return on investment for AI. Is it just working on individual productivity, or can we move it to actual organizational performance? So, wow. And I love the examples coming in. Keep them flowing in here. These are great examples, and we'll actually cycle through some of these as we move forward. But definitely along the line, even if you're just joining the journey, love to see that. Keep trying it, and hopefully throughout the day you'll get inspired, some ideas. And as always, in the chat, would love to hear from other folks' lived experiences, their point of expertise. Well, let's all learn from each other as we're going. So anyway, I pulled out a couple of these statistics here, which are just trying to reinforce the level of expectations that we're running into. And why is this important, that organizations are feeling more pressure to move to ROI now versus even just a year ago? Investors are expecting positive ROI in 6 months or less. And then as ever shift from the hype to the execution, they're really starting to say, how are we going to be bringing that forward into showing meaningful impact in the business place? And we play such a critical role because humans are such a critical component of being able to deliver that value. We have to enable the humans to be the humans they are. So I think this is one of those big things that kind of comes through to us. I'm a big movie fan, and if you haven't seen this, I recommend catching it out there. Take a look at it. But I love going out and looking at movies and bringing concepts from other movies into the work that we do. And there's a reference in here called the Moneyball. It is a great, and it's a story about the 2003, really the Oakland A's using data analytics and an innovative approach to really rethinking about how they're going to build a winning roster with one of the smallest budgets in Major League Baseball. And the whole story is really about Billy Beane and a data analyst that brought to the table and rethinking and challenging assumptions, challenging the way scouts used to think about identifying talent, bringing talent forward, and identifying that. So changing their perspective, the way they tackle the thoughts around how they be able to bring a roster to bear that can actually win and bring that forward. I think there are many parallels to that story that are out there. And actually the same approach that was used for the Oakland A's, the Boston Red Sox actually leveraged it as well, and it got them into their championship that they were out there as well. So in 2026, I think, again, we've got the same thing. We realize that, we've got to realize the value of ROI of AI that's out there. We got to help start showing incremental progression towards that. And we've got to do that while still operating in such a volatile, uncertain, and complex environment, all while facing increasing budget pressures. And just like the story about the approach to Moneyball, it's not just about the cheapest or it's out there. It's about drawing insights that actually deliver impact. And that's the way we're going to have to do it. We're going to have to leverage data, and I mean big D data, not just content, but content, context, the important information, what we know about our learning population, where they are and trying to apply it, all of that, and then really rethinking our work, the way we go to design, develop, and deliver, and increasingly move it from I'm just dabbling or using it individually to actually rethinking the way we do the work. So if you haven't seen the movie, it's a great movie to go out there. It's and of course I had to pick him because he looks just like me, so I was trying to keep the likeness out there very similar. All right, trend number one. We're going to jump into trend number one. It's about AI-enabled performance, not just AI adoption. This is from an EY, Ernst & Young's 2025 Reimagined Work Survey. 88% of employees use AI at work, but only 5% are using it in advanced ways to transform their work. We can talk about, is it really 88% or what, but I think the trend is there where we have a lot of people that may be using like Copilot or an internal large language model, their own GPT. But the question is, are they using it in advanced ways to train their work? And that is where you start to get to true ROI on the integration and implementation of AI. So it's really about us. And I've shown this journey before, and it's really relevant where we started off, years ago when they just launched OpenAI, put a chat interface on front of that. We started with the individuals outside the organization, starting to play with it. What is this thing? Everybody got their own free license. Organizations were saying, don't put our data in that. Don't bring it in-house. Don't do that. And then the second phase is really where we start to move with organizations using internal GPTs. They can apply it on their data inside the organization. And I call this the individual productivity lens. So this is like using Copilot, for example, in your day-to-day activity to do the things you did yesterday slightly differently with the use of AI. You're not really re-engineering the work, but you're using it to generate, to summarize, to do some light things like that to speed up the work. Now, if you think of the overall work performance chain, you may be actually increasing the productivity within each link of the chain, but you're not shortening the chain itself. And that's really where phase three really is. And there are several organizations that are moving into this space and in this direction where I call it organizational performance versus the individual productivity of phase two. And it's really about integrating AI into reimagined workflows, thinking differently about how we accomplish the work, the role of the humans and the wisdom that they bring and apply to the work, while the AI is taking on tasks with automation, generation, integration of analytics, or more importantly, we're even bringing them into autonomous systems, orchestration of these agents to be able to run large parts of the organization loosely, autonomously, as the humans are still wrapped around on the inputs, the outputs, the validation, but it's getting more and more autonomous in certain parts of it. But that means we need to rethink the way we do the work and not just, really taking a step back and say, where do the humans really need to be in the role? Make sure that we set them up for that, and the AI is enabling them to come in and deliver that. Within that, you'll see kind of the growth of the range of agents. This is an example of just, ourselves, and there are other organizations that are doing this well. Instead of just having like Copilot, which is available as a general use tool, we're creating a range of agents. And then we've got them in categories that tie into bigger goals like content analysis and extraction, or content analysis and evaluation, and being able to draw insights from large bodies of curricula that may be out there. And so each of these categories looks at an output. But the idea here is that we've got a whole series of underlying agents that can be combined and recombined to be able to do tasks. So it's really around the fit for purpose strategy with that. So the idea is, as an organization, how do we not only take the data that we have, but also take the wisdom of our insights of the practice, rethink the workflow, apply these agents in that to do things faster, better, or ways that we haven't been able to do them in the past. And so this is kind of that evolution in phase three that we're seeing out there. But I have to say that this is about, and this is holding true, the research is showing this, that no, it's not about just AI absolutely displacing humans. It's about being able to enable the humans, not replacing them. And it's really about bringing intelligence and wisdom to the table with this one. And so I love this metaphor. If you haven't heard it, It actually pulled it from Brian O'Driscoll, who's a former rugby player. I'm sure it's probably attributed to a very wise grandmother who was trying to explain to him the difference between intelligence and wisdom, probably telling him, think you're really smart, but maybe you're not about something. But here's the thing. The difference between intelligence and wisdom is that intelligence is knowing that a tomato is a fruit, for example, and wisdom is knowing not to put it into a fruit salad. And that is where just a very simplified example of the difference between intelligence and wisdom in this humans, the value of our lived experiences, the way in which we do things, the way we're effective at our jobs, the insights, the discretions we make to drive performance, we have to cultivate that wisdom. And without wisdom, the intelligence and actually the value from that intelligence will actually deprecate or degrade over time. So instead of, and one of the things I've been advocating, instead of actually becoming, the learning and development department, maybe we become the wisdom crafting or part of the organization. So the idea is how do we actually bring that forward and help put that into place so we can drive value work better, faster, not just with our AI partners, but also with our other human team members as well. So what really is that wisdom matters a lot in the quality of the outputs. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. But again, it's an intelligence and wisdom. It's not replacing them. It's bringing them forward. We may not need as many of the humans to do some of the tasks, but what we are seeing is that those humans are critical and we have to make sure they are upskilled and able to do that. So yes. I love that. I love that you're going to need to change your email signature now. I love that. I appreciate that. All right, so let me continue ahead here. The key takeaways from this first real trend that I'm talking about is it's an evolution. Move from are we using AI to is AI helping us do the work faster, better, and or in new ways? And this is stepping into a different role. We're coming in and saying this is about applied wisdom in the context of the agentic natures we're moving towards that. And the organizations, in order to get to that ROI, have to get to that third phase of where you're embedding and changing the workflows. The opportunity is really to support and develop wise, high-performing humans enabled by AI. That's the opportunity. That's our challenge, and that's our value point is how do we help craft, refine, and enable that wisdom of the workforce? And the imperative is create the learning systems that drive business outcomes, not just usage around the AI. So I think that's a big thing for this first one around here that will really kind of keep us thinking on that, how we're moving through this. But again, it's about that shift. All right, so the trend two is I'm going to a new terminology that's kind of come out, and so this is something that we're embracing at GP Strategies. We're bringing forward, and think of it as learning velocity. And within that, there's learning agility and some elements, and I bring that, and I'll talk about that in a second. But really, learning velocity becomes a strategic imperative, and it allows us to be able to not only drive a competitive advantage, but a competitive advantage in the light of highly disrupted times. And so I love this quote down here from Mark Maroney, really talking about, how speed to skill, that enablement. And it's not just that skill, it's the application, that wisdom around that. It becomes a defining competitive advantage, but he puts it out there. In fact, it may be the only sustainable competitive advantage left, which is fascinating. I love. And again, this is the mandate. I think this is if we have the right mindset, the right way that we approach our work, and we think differently how we do this, man, we can step into such a powerful value position for the organization. Moving from the cost containment conversation to an actual competitive advantage, much like the journey of supply chain management 20 years ago as it moved from locations to warehouses into actually being able to identify buying trends and change relationships with vendors using data and insights to really drive that. I think that we have a great opportunity for this. So a little bit more about this. So if you think about learning velocity, it's the speed at which employees adapt, acquire, apply, and sharpen new skills. And so how can we continue to match the rate and change of the business, the way in which the work is changing, the work environment is changing, and even the workers, the way that they bring themselves to the job. How do we continue to help match all of that rate of change with what we're calling learning velocity? Now, the learning velocity formula is really being able to embed relevance, making it absolutely accessible, and I mean little a accessible in the sense that it's accessible to everybody through a variety of formats and modalities, but more importantly, can I get it when and where and how I need it? And then action is being able to transfer that, and this is really getting to driving to transfer into performance in the workplace, and then continuously refining it as you're going. So really thinking about how do you create the engine around this to drive the learning velocity formula. So I would love, and I'm going to continue here, but I would love to hear your thoughts and reactions to, as we're talking a little bit about learning velocity and how we do that. I'll explain a little bit more as we go, but I would love to see some of your initial reactions in the chat window as we're going through with that. So, and I'm going to tell you, I can take challenges and critiques as well as accolades. It's all about growing moments here, but we feel pretty strongly that this is a critical direction we need to go. So now, how do you start to build your organization into a learning velocity engine? So how do you really start to do that? And so as we kind of move from one state to the next, and um, yeah, I love that. Thank you. Getting that buy-in. But I think if you can anchor just real quick on that note on the buy-in of the executives, if they are feeling the pressure to deliver ROI, this allows you to be able to say, we need to be able to help you do that because the wisdom of the humans, we have to enable that. This is how you start to be able to do that. Moving from, in a strategic focus of just enabling usage to driving performance, that has to be a bias in how we approach learning and what we're rolling out there. The work in the workforce is changing. Who are we applying this to? It's going from human only to human plus AI. And not even that, but as we start to think of teams and groups of functions, groups of humans with groups of AI, agentic AI in the workflow. So it's starting to get even more complex on how we're doing it. Even a skill, we start to look at skills, and some skills may be human only, but we may look at the mastery demonstration of a skill actually includes a human plus AI as part of it. And I'm not just talking about a technology, but it's the human and the AI collaborating to do that demonstration and mastery. The learning operations from being siloed or separated out or set aside is like we'll do the training stuff. You do the really important enablement inside the business type stuff. No, it has to be connected. It has to be AI enabled, and it's really about how we can help the organization do things faster, better, or in new ways that we haven't been able to do that for. Learning outputs, historically, I know we've been looking at things like discrete courses. Even when we start to kind of pull together a learning pathway, it's a series of disconnected pieces. What I'm talking about in the future is now running an AI powering an asset enabled personalized learning experiences. And we're starting to see the ability to be able to do that now with even the tools that we have in our hands to be able to send that out internally for organizations. Measurement going from traditional learning metrics into AI enabled integrated metrics that bring together not just looking at did I learn, but how am I transforming? How am I aligning with the HR metrics? How am I aligning with the business metrics? So you have to get an integrated measurement strategy that says when we put something in place to bring them enablement, will it show results? Not only those most lagging indicators, but the leading indicators that come up to the changes in behaviors, the frequency of the activities into those lagging and most lagging indicators of did we increase revenue, did we decrease cost, etc. And the last one really is important because this has to be a part of everything that we do. Change the way we think about change. And I know that it's like we have so much disruption that we're thinking about change. And part of this is just adaptation, but more importantly, around intentional change. When we want to change behaviors, change mindsets, we need to think about it as embedded, agile, and continuous with a real focus on sustainability. And has to be part. We can't think of change management as something else we do extra above and beyond. It has to be a part of everything we do. Just like we brought in, project management has to be part of our initiatives. It's a critical component. We have to do it. How could you ever have a project and not manage it? So when you have an initiative like this, change has to be part of the considerations, but it should be an agile mindset. We're not trying to, historically, we used to know what the change was. We get people on board with the change, and then we kind of go through, we evaluate, do we make the change? Folks join in or join us, self-select out of it, but we had a beginning and end to it. Now we're seeing it's not really beginning and ending. and we don't know what the actual change is. We don't know the exact job or work of the future. So how do we build to something when we don't know what it is? We use agile strategies to kind of help get to what good looks like over time. And that means that that measurement also has to be part of how are we mapping across that progression. So this is an important shift and changes of what we're in that. So the ethical use of AI in dealing with concerns people have, absolutely. I don't talk about it a lot here today, but it has to be part of this. One of the things we started on our journey was absolutely having in it, you start off with the ethical and responsible use of AI as guidelines. We had a policy and a procedure and an ethical decision making matrix because we don't know all the ways that AI will come into the organization. So it's hard to kind of create really detailed procedures and policies around everything as it evolves. But you do have to have guidelines, and we have six key elements of which we do that says here's how you will apply AI and how we will responsibly use it, for example. And there's elements of in there of like do no harm. You have to think about the bigger picture of what is the intended impact and the output with that. But thank you for bringing that up. I couldn't be a bigger champion of making sure that we are doing that. And that's actually what makes this really challenging is this is a thinking moment for a lot of organizations. They are going to be put into positions where they are going to be collaborating with AI to do problem solving, thinking their ways through it. Application of AI is not a simple transactional to do it ethically and safe. We can set guardrails around it. But anyway, I appreciate you sharing that. It is absolutely important for what we got out there. Yes, and Jessica, I get it that many practitioners are not fully trained in change management. So I will tell you that as a recovering instructional designer, I think I look to the future roles of where we are and where we're going with that. Those are two skill sets that I highly recommend that you learn more about and you start to think about how you would apply them and bring them into. There's a mindset around change management and there's a mindset around agile. If you have one place you want to start with agile, I would check out the Agile Manifesto. I love the origins of this were set in a document called the Agile Manifesto. I think there's like 11 or I can't remember how many there are in it. My favorite, I think, is number 9, which is maximizing the amount of work not done. Man, in this world of disruption and change, we've got to manage how much we're doing. So don't over engineer. Do exactly what you do. No more, no less than what you need to be able to get the feedback, the impact, the outputs, whatever's out there. The concept of MVPs is absolutely fundamental to what we're doing. So anyway, it's a great point. Thank you, Jessica, for sharing that. All right, I'm going to push us ahead. So thinking about our L&D organizations and how they function or how they enable the broader organization. So I wanted to say is that as we think about creating so that another lens for the engine behind this is how will we drive meeting a range of moments of learning need, not just when we're learning something for the first time, like I'm introducing AI for the first concept or learning a little bit more about it, but I need to support them when they're actually applying and refining something. So they're actually doing it and trying to get better at it. There's a moment of when I need to learn something, and there's certain ways that we support them in that. When I adjust to change, when I'm reacting to failure, these are all critical moments. And of course, me being me, I added in 2 more that I think are important because the first 5 are really about how do we set a system up to which I call convergent, is to really get everybody up to a standard of performance, consistable, reliable performance. Moments that I added at the bottom are really around innovation and growing. And the reason I call those out is that these are what I would call divergent needs. When it's not like telling me to give me something that you gave me yesterday, but when I'm out there for support wise, something different, something less immediately relevant and further out on the relevant scale, how do I start to bring that in? Because I will need those inputs, those supports, those insights from different parts. And if you have to learn how to break out of the system that's really trying to put you into a convergent area of performance. So there's an element around that. We have to drive learner agency. That's the middle column that I have here. We need to shift them from just being a consumer and really thinking about how they're engaging as a moderator, curator, contributor, all of those things in there, collaborator, so that we are integrating the humans and they're bringing their wisdom and their expertise, not only into the AI systems, but as part of working teams with that. And the AI can help make it easier to extract and share that information as it kind of walks along as we're doing the work. We can find ways to allow me to rapidly package up an insight and publish or share it out there. So starting to think about ways that you want to be able to bring in not only user generated insights and extending the learning experience. That's how you really start to really the key for meeting moments 3, 4, and 5 is really going to come from your champion groups, your working groups to help bring wisdom of saying, here's how I've solved this problem, or here's what I'm working through. So cultivating that community, that social learning space is really driven by helping them take their accountability for their learning and enabling them it easy to share, contribute, etc. Now, the third one are what I would start to call new roles that are kind of popping out here. So I'm throwing these things out here. And so I haven't seen a job description yet. I've seen some that are kind of looking like this, but think about it as moving from an instructional designer traditionally or a learning course creator to a learning experience orchestrator, a data enabler as we start to look at the vast amount of courses, content, insights, community, all that rich base. How do we actually cultivate that data set to be able to provide the most value in either the using AI enabled generation or being able to do predictive elements with it, but being able to create a truly trusted data set out there. That's what these data enablers do. It's more than just what I consider the traditional data science role. This is really thinking in terms of enabling agentic AI and how we take advantage of all that powerful knowledge that we have in the organization. AI enabled experts for coaching. And this is blending, agents with humans to be able to bring in coaching to extend and expand sustainably across the organization. Driving in learning champions. How do we start to get folks that are in the feed? The champions have been a technique or an approach out there we've used before. We should continue to use them in AI, but they should be AI enabled as they go about doing their work as well. And the last one is thinking of agentic teams specifically designed to support the learner. So we start to look at our traditional roles in an organization, the way we're putting it out, meeting those needs, and this is how we start to think about pushing that out there differently. So I love that. And thank you for dropping in the link to the Agile Manifesto. I appreciate that. Thank you. All right, I'm going to keep pushing this ahead. This is one other element. I talk a lot about relevance. Within this one is we need to think about how do we design for relevance. And this is one of the things in an organization that we try to get to. So if I have a learning goal is like use business acumen to make effective business decisions. That's the impact. That's the outgoal. We want to make better business decisions. How do I help, business leaders be able to do that? I give them, for example, a business acumen model. I help them understand different variables you take into account to make a decision. One of those things could be, for example, understanding financial statements. In this case, it's like, what does an income statement look like? What can an income statement tell you? Balance sheet, cash flow statement. When we're reading the financial, the language of the organization, how do I read that? That's great. And honestly, as an L&D practitioner, I should hope we never have to build another course like that, because if it's not already available out there publicly, AI would perfectly help you generate that. So that's not where we want to be. Where we want to start to go to is the second layer of relevance, moving on to the third. So, because if you know anything about income statements, they may be structured the same, but a general income statement or another company's income statement versus ours will tell two very different stories. Even though they're structured similarly, they will tell a different story. So how do you read our income statement? What does it tell to us? And that contextualization is important, and that is generally not widely available. Now, our goal is as performance consultants is another dimension of that, what I call that learning orchestration, is how do we help pull that knowledge out of the head of our experts into these spaces to be able to share that, to make that consumable, to make that on demand. And then the third one, and it kind of continues on from there, is how do I use our income statements to really drive business decisions? And this is where you're trying to really get in and capture the wisdom of the organization. So how do we do it for our structure, our competitive advantage, where we're located, how we solve this, the legacy of how we've gotten here? All of that is very unique to the organization, and that context is so important. And missing that context is the difference from a generalized concept or skill to actually applied wisdom towards impact. And that's what you have to help is those kind of performance consulting, um, you know. Uh, Analysts to go out and find that and help pull that out and make that available in that trusted data set to be reused to generate more courses or to create on-demand learning support as you're going. So anyway, this is kind of, you got to think about how you're doing it. It's exciting part is that we don't have to have the battle of like creating just simple learning components. We can actually move up the chain. There's plenty of work for us to do. It's the wisdom of our craft applied to the wisdom of the performance organization. All right, key takeaways again here. Optimize the learning organization for learning velocity. Start thinking differently on how we, everything from design, develop, deliver, do demand planning, engaging strategically with the business. Start thinking differently, looking at that for velocity. Increase the agency, empower the learners. That will create some intentionality that is a culture shift. Again, change management is going to come into that. You can't just say, hey, you guys are all now, it's able to do that. And we've just made it all out there self-service. And in the end, it ends up fend for yourself because they haven't been empowered. They don't know how to learn. You do have to spend some time with it. Design for relevance. Bring in an atomic design as you're starting to pull things together. And then leverage AI to help deliver it, meeting them at those moments of learning need. Help them get that information as they're trying to drive that. And again, this is how we help show that top line of starting to get to when it gets applied in the actual changing of that business. That's how you'll get to that ROI for the actual business. All right, I'm gonna push this ahead. Picking up steam here. Trend 3: building a skills first infrastructure that works. I think I love this quote is the sense that, this is something, it's a little bit, it was in a data set that's kind of come up, but the point is we've been dealing with skilling for a long time. So the question is, can we effectively classify and organize that? And then how many can we get a key output for that as we're going? So I think that's one of the key elements that as we're working through, we're able to bring that. But it's not just having a taxonomy in place. It's also about being able to, it'll pop up here in a second. It looks like it's thinking for a second. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that and pop up, show it here in a second. It's going to be around the ontology, showing not just having a taxonomy in place, but thinking about a layered ontology as we're bringing that forward to the organization. So let me show that. All right, there we go. All right, thank you. All right, so this is something that's new, talking about it a little bit differently with that. And so I know a lot of people are familiar probably with taxonomies. There are some really great ones out there, like Lightcast, TechWolf. They can bring very rich taxonomies. But where I'm really talking about is moving towards an ontology, which shows or expands the relationships between the data and goes different in a way. And so these are ways that you think about being able to do an ontology really gives you the ability to respond to how the actual work gets done. So the last mile challenge around taxonomies is that I have general skills and I can do all my skilling and then I get onto the job, but I can't do the work. And what we're trying to do is cover that gap. And an ontology helps you bridge that between the taxonomical layer all the way down to the work layer. So column 1 are layers of things that would come into an ontology. So you go from competencies, cross-functional skills, bringing those things in. And then the layers on the right are almost from the bottom up, really looking at how do we get to the actual work? What are the work outputs? How do we measure that? What are the KPIs that are tied to that? How do we, and this is in the applied elements around those skill sets. What are the learning assets and experiences that tie directly to be able to do that? What's the connection with those? And then the data integration is really providing that, ensuring that seamless connectivity across the platforms as you're starting to use this to not only help identify great talent, but enable them as they're moving through and continue them through a career progression and help them resolve a challenge in their specific job, grow as the work is changing. So being able to do this. And so this is new, but this is an area that there's some great work done with this. The Fathom under Pearson is a great example of an organization that has an ontology out there that really starts to enable building that bridge between having insights. And here's the really powerful part. Not only does it help us make sense of what we're seeing today and prepare us to move, but it can also start to layer in how we start to look at trend projection as work evolves. So as the work is changing, so as we think about the AI technology and an agentic layer, I'm thinking about marketing, and I have a whole new set of agents. Well, that's great in year one, but as the technology improves and the humans evolve, what is year two? So you can start to look at trends around that, and that allows you to go from more of a reactive structure, the ability to actually do a reactive structure, but now it's also starting to get into a proactivity and looking at saying, what are we seeing the trends around this, so you can start to get out to it. This is trying to get to an ability for us to sustainability around skilling to make it work. I think this is one of the things that we've been missing is we build these massive taxonomies. We link up the courses, and in the end, it says, can I do the work? And there's a last mile challenge that we got to cover. And then this is just some of the elements that we've seen historically around skilling. There was a great article that talked about, skilling is the juice worth the squeeze. I love the article. Came out a year or so ago, maybe a little bit longer, but it really kind of talked about what are we struggling with in overall skilling strategies. I believe skilling infrastructure is absolutely fundamental to the AI enablement systems of the future. We have to have it in there, but we need to think smarter about how we do that and bring that forward. So, the old attempt to organize the internet into a Yahoo Direct. Correct. The important distinction between this is that think of it as a flexible versus rigid structure. What the ontology allows us is to bring in fuzzy, ill-shapen data and make connections with it and be able to continuously adjust and adapt with that. Taxonomies are extremely rigid. This is the problem, is that historically we just kept trying to drive the taxonomies deeper and be more descriptive of them as we're driving through them. And I think that's the thing, is that we can't go out and organize it and know where it's at in this rigid structure. We need a more flexible, adaptive, agile approach to respond to the way in which the work is going to change. Tony, I appreciate you bringing that up because that is one of the core things we're out there as we talk about that. So thank you. It is fundamentally different, and philosophically, in order to make it work, you have to think differently about how you're doing it. But I love that because we can't fall in the same trap you just called out. So thank you. All right, so when you look at mapping this across this, so how do we look at taking that skilling I think is really in the center of what we talk about, that talent life cycle, but it's also allowing us to bring together, because if we anchor it to the work, that architecture, if it anchors to the work, it really helps us connect in the perspectives of the enterprise, HR, L&D, and employee, because if we focus on the work and how we enable them to do that, that is the unifying element. And the skills anchoring to the work help us get a more common language on how we're able to do that. And then whether you're in L&D or HR, we start to get some. And this has been one of the biggest challenges, that when I talk about skilling, they use skilling differing in HR or talent. They use it differently in the business, and L&D uses it. This allows us to get to a more shared understanding, anchoring to the work that we're trying to do. All right, key takeaways again here. You have to apply an agile mindset to your skilling initiative. You have to build in that mechanism for response, adjustment, adaptation. Engage across the enterprise. You can't just do this from L&D. You can't just do this from the business. It has to be something that you bring in at a high level, but then my recommendation is quickly applying it in a vertical. Help a role tied to work become better, do better, not just a skill gap, but really drive performance in that new mindset. So quickly help set the structure at an enterprise level, but you're going to get your wins in the vertical by enabling that vertical to do the work better, whether it's sales or marketing or manufacturing or R&D. That's how you have to do that. Shift from a taxonomy only to an ontology. We talked a lot about that. So some of the key things that we're seeing, we are seeing some real pushes with that. So, all right, so let's talk about immersive and in the flow of work learning, and why I group these two together. This is all about proximity to work. So bringing enablement strategies, learning as they're getting into being able to do the work. And that's really what it is. So some examples of being like using augmented reality in the workflow. So being able to have an augmented over while I'm trying to do work. It could be first time, a little bit learning about a concept or a process. I could actually be in the middle of a process applying it. How do I remediate on something? So augmented reality gives you the ability to apply information at the point of work in the context around that, and you can bring a whole range of moments of learning need at that point. AI coaching. This gets back to how do I help you do your job better? One of our big problems has been really around the scalability for this. If we just tried to scale it with humans, it was really hard from everything from identifying, qualifying to matching people up on the coaching. We start to bring in AI and it makes this more possible. Not only being able to scale an AI plus human teams that allows you to extend the reach to get the differing layers of like questions or support through a coaching strategy with it, but it also allows you to draw on the information in the back end to be deeper and more supportive around that. So it's not just AI based by itself. It's really around that human plus AI enablement around that. These are just some ways that you can talk about some of the outcomes and then start to getting to, nudging into that space around the ROI. And then looking at the AI role play scenarios, this allows us to put you into a performance authentic environment without the risk of or the facility challenges or the logistic challenges of trying to put you there. This allows you to put you in close proximity to get as close to actual performance so we can give you feedback, we can get data on your strengths and weaknesses. We can also actually carve out new insights that may be brought to that. So the ability to roll out evolving, changing performance scenarios aligned with what we're seeing in the real world. These are just three ways to be able to do this. It's about getting closer to the work and ultimately enabling ROI as we're going with that. So great question here. It says, do you find it be better to build this in-house rather than an external vendor? I believe that it is that there are layers that you can do. So you need your internal data because that coaching context has to be anchored and with your trusted wisdom and knowledge and information. But do you have to build the vehicle of a coach by yourself? You can bring that in. But in today's world, you can actually build that internally as well. What's critical is spending the time to make sure that you are integrating the wisdom of effective coaches into the agents that you're using. That's the hard part. It's not enough to get somebody to generate a response. It's an intelligent, informed, contextually relevant engine. That's where helping the coaches understand what they are. So there are some great tools out there that can really help drive a lot of that around that validation and deep around that. So Skillable is a great example of if you have the ability to get into some of this validation and certification around like technology implementations. Am I able to kind of go through the problem solvings and demonstrate that? That's just one of many tools that can actually be able to set that up. Yes, and I think that that's absolutely a great question. Is that not only asking intelligent questions, but pulling out and making sure that you're making sense of those questions and then giving an intelligent response behind it. So the key takeaways around this one here again is about trying to get back to using the immersive solutions to get to drive the application, the validation that you've been able to do this. So the predictive, not just saying you're skilled, but we actually have proof that you're actually able to do it. In the flow of work, connecting the learning to that moment of need. Again, getting back to that spot, and then using the both strategies we talked about, the coaching and the immersive elements to really drive that continuous validation of whether you're level one progressing to level two or level three. This is a good way to kind of pull you through that journey to be able to track and say, hey, Matt just demonstrated a level three of that skill in the context of work. That's a great way to be able to pull that out and add it to my performance portfolio, my validated skill anchored performance portfolio. Trend 5 is really around human and AI leadership. Can't talk about annual trends without considering our leadership as part of this. And fundamentally, they have to be a part of this. And I think one of the things that we're seeing in this is we're trying to get through this is that in some cases, leaders are kind of defaulting to protection over progression. But it's in the sense of I'm waiting for data. I'm waiting for more data. I'm waiting for a validation of what good looks like. And what I'm saying, the urgency is now is that it says we can't wait to know what perfect looks like. You have to progressively start doing things, taking an agile approach, integrating that agile mindset into being able to move the workforce intelligently, targeting key areas where there may be specified quick upturns, and getting in there and upskilling and being able to do that will help them show what good looks like while building what good looks like. So you're not going to think your way through this. You're not going to wait for the big answer at the end. You can't wait to start. And the reason I do this is what will become pretty clear pretty quickly is that the quality of your data structures and that trusted data source will emerge pretty quickly as to how good some of the AI you put in place is. So then you're going to say, okay, how do we get to that trusted, nurtured data source? And then once you get that problem addressed and solved, your future AI is set for success. Whatever you roll out, what you want to do, getting your trusted data source is going to be critical. But the leaders have to be bold, have to have a vision, almost have a sense of vulnerability of like, I don't really know where we're going on this, but we will get there together and we're going to figure out and we're going to put in a scientific, evidence-based process to get there, finding out what works. So it's going to be really thinking about leadership and AI around this, a combination of skills between the IQ, the intelligence, of course, what are they bringing with industry knowledge, domain expertise, the emotional side of this around the empathy, the growth, the resilience, bringing in the technology. This is a new one. I love this one. And that's embracing the technology, thinking about how we integrate. So a mindset of going human only into AI enabled humans or tech first. We have to think that it can't just be IT will figure that out. It is going to be integrated in the very fabric of the way in which businesses work and compete. And then the last one is really bringing in the cultural awareness around that sensitivity. I mean, a lot of these things sound like okay, we've heard about some of those. The TQ is new a little bit, but the importance is that as with any immensely pressure-driven system, almost a sense of a crisis, you have to step in and bring these things to do. What we can't do is some of those more toxic leadership behaviors where we don't communicate, we're not transparent with our decisions, we're not bringing those forward to the table, we're not being inclusive into the decision making, the enablement, even the accountability. So really trying to eliminate those and get back to the really good leadership in the context of what we're facing around AI adoption. Key takeaways around this is develop the core mindsets, growth, agile, inclusive, and enterprise. Reinforce a leader as a learner kind of rituals. Like we're going to learn together. We're going to do this. I've been using X, Y, Z. I'd love to see all the examples as you're getting into it. Hard to teach it, hard to advocate for it if you're not using it. Teach decision making under uncertainty. Bringing this in is how do we make progressively evidence-based decisions without having all the data and all the inputs? What do we do when we don't know what to do? And we do that in a successive, structured approach. Reinforce an innovative and agile mindset. Again, we've got to go out there. There's risk and failure that goes with what we're going to do. You're not going to be 100% right. Get past being perfect. But you want to make sure that when you take the risks, you're doing it in a structured approach and using a systematic, sustainable innovation approach that allows you to bring these things in with a high likelihood of success. So it's just not wildly abandoning and adopting AI. You're actually putting it through a process that allows you to test and learn and gain insights as you're going, because that's the cycle. You want to push that learning curve as quick as you possibly can. Promoting transparent decision making as much as you can be transparent as where we're going. So these are all things to not only help it enable leadership to do, but down actually into the front line to be able to kind of embed some of these things as we work with our peers, as we take that leadership of ourselves, as we're helping the organization as well. So I don't think it's just for the top folks. I think it's organizationally all the way through. All right, I'm going to push ahead to data-driven impact and measurement. Again, just like leadership, we can't have a trend session if we're not talking about data and measurement. And I think this is one of the things is that your AI is only as good as the data that you have underneath of it. And the thing is that you have to prepare your data to be a force multiplier. It's not just about what's in here, but think of it as an organic element that grows and can actually grow to deliver increasing value over time if you cultivate it, reinforce it, and protect its nature as a trusted resource. This is absolutely critical for you to do. I put a couple of examples in here. Not going to go through all of them, but it's like understanding the impact of our data. One of my favorite ones is not all wrong data is wrong. I love this insight. So if you're a learning development professional, one of the things that we do is we can actually use AI to go through and meta tag courses in an LMS to increase search, finding, all of that. Because we know in an LMS, the course metadata is incomplete or inconsistent. So we use AI to go through at scale to look at them. And for each course, it'll scan the course and it'll come out with here's what we recommend the abstract is, here's the learning objectives, here if your taxonomy side to it, here's what we think it connects to in your skills taxonomy. It can make those recommendations. But here's the thing, at the end of a course, you have a 10-question quiz. All right, inside that quiz, you have 10 correct answers. That's the one I got to correct if I want to pass the quiz. And then 3 distractors, which are absolutely wrong answers. The point is that AI doesn't know the difference between a correct answer and an incorrect answer unless we bring the wisdom to the table to help it identify and differentiate. So this is where the wisdom, as we go to creating assessments and understanding the nature of this, and we can't just get rid of those things, but we understand that if it pulled one of those 30 statements into the abstract, that's not a hallucination, that's our data set. So as the wisdom we're bringing in this, we need to help it understand, AI understand what's in the data, how do you use it, almost that contextual relevance for different perspectives. If I'm going to use an AI agent to help me do new employee onboarding, or compared to an actual performance, somebody in the field that's been advanced and they've been there for a while doing something, I have the concept of a policy and procedure and an emerging best practice. For the new employee coming on, a policy and procedure will be more helpful, more appropriate for them than a policy or procedure. But for the person who's performing in the work, if I need AI to help me find something, don't send me back to the policy and procedure. Help me find the emerging best practices that are going to help me solve my problem. Again, context matters in the world of AI more than ever. All right, I'm going to push this ahead. You need to evaluate the organization's AI readiness as you're going through. It's important to kind of look across these dimensions, to be thinking about as you're progressing, as we talked about, as you're moving through the phases, to be able to help you know where are you at, where are you going, and how do you do that. You can't just build, and say, we're just going to jump to phase 3 immediately, be done with everything and everything's set. You're going to kind of go through a series of phases as you become more structured and enabled as you're going. And you start from this phase 1, as we've seen, that ad hoc, all the way to the transformational, where you really change the ways you're doing your business. Your measurement strategy has to kind of evolve with that as you're going. That readiness diagnostic allows you to also think about how are you ready as the organization or a group to progress to this as well. So having those diagnostics as well as your overall data strategy or measurement strategy is absolutely critical to do. And correct, perfection is never the goal. I think that, as you're going through, as you're saying, I love that, Jesse, you shared that where you think your work is in for phase 3. I love that. Got the takeaways here. Create an AI enhanced data strategy. You got to think about how you're going to create your trusted data sets that all the AI is going to be able to draw insights to, generate from, automate around, etc. When you have your measurement map, to be able to kind of show that relationship from the lagging indicators all the way to the investment you have, you need to expand that to think about human as an AI as a measurement of it, because we're not doing them just as humans as well. So we'll need to start to bring that as well. So this brings me to my last trend, which is around personalization and accessibility to scale. And this is the stretch and reach part of the session. And when you really get to thinking about deep personalization around it, so I got two parts of this. And this is the first one is thinking of your learning concierge. As we start to really move from the concept of the LMS, which was take these courses, to the LXP, which was about, hey, what do I need to do? The curated strategy and that pull strategy. Now getting into what do I need to learn? Almost that Google search window that says, what do I need to do? But now wrapping an intelligent, knowledgeable concierge that can also take what you share with it, what it knows about you and what it knows about the organization and what's available in there to be able to make intelligent, rational recommendations around what's in it from a trusted data source tied to what you're trying to do in that space. So this actually on the left-hand side, we're starting to see this. We're definitely in this space of creating these tool sets to enable an organization to draw upon that vast amount of information, be able to actually get insights in it at scale that they haven't been able to before, really giving that interesting point, almost that concierge to help you get through. On the other side is the digital twin. And this is bigger than your organization. It's about me being able to create a snapshot of me, a digital representation of myself as I've grown before I got to the organization, while I'm with the organization, when I move out. And what that allows is as I go into the organization, I can share my digital twin with it. And when it connects up with the backbone of like a learning concierge system, it can now not only do things that it pushes to me, things that I want to pull from it, but it also allows to predict what kind of things I will need based on the work I'm engaging in, who I'm working with, where I'm going, what I'm doing. So this is the push. I'm telling you, we're on the cusp of this. This is already out there. There are some things out there to do that. It gets into the data sets, and so it will continue to get better. But the premise for both of these items are already out there. They are in their early stage forms, in my opinion, of ultimately where we want to go. But it's pretty daggone amazing what it's able to do. So I'm totally digging it. And there are some great ones out there. So, all right, we're right at the time. We're on that. Again, move towards deep learner personalization, explore the concept of digital twins, learn more about it, just push you a little bit on that. And I move to that atomic design strategy in order to support those two engines as we're going. Had some questions that we've gone through here. You guys have been great. Thank you for that, by the way. And I'm out there. Connect with me. Would love to hear from you guys with that. Thanks to see everybody out there and have you guys again. As always, another great one. And let's keep the conversation going. My last set is as we go into driving towards AI, really around that productivity, fall in love with the problem, not the solution.
I love your sessions, Matt. They're just always so therapeutic. You feel like you leave with like so much like information and knowledge. And I know everyone else in the chat also agrees with me as well. So thank you so much for such a lovely presentation this week.
Fantastic. Thanks to everyone. Appreciate it. I'll see you out there in the digital space.
Yes. So I am going to steal a screen, but you will get a copy of this deck. So if you didn't get to scan Matt's QR code, don't worry, it will be coming shortly. But for everyone else, I do want to invite you for some up and coming events this month and even including into next month. You can register for these programs and watch past webinars now at trainingshoot.com, including this one. If you want to watch it again, it will be there by end of day. And all of our webinars are pre-qualified for a credit hour by HRCI, SHRM, ISPI, and CPTM. So send an email to me or anybody on the TI team and we will send you those codes. If I said CPTM and you're unfamiliar with that language, it is our certified and professional and training management program that assists you in developing core competencies that will empower you to manage the future training needs of your organization. So you can find more information at trainingshoot.com/training. And I would love to meet you all here in Raleigh, North Carolina for the 2026 Training Industry Conference and Expo. TICE is where learning layers like you gather to forge new professional connections and you learn from each other. And we have early bird going on until end of March. So check out that deal before it's too late. Lastly, that evaluation survey should have popped open another tab in your browser, and we would appreciate your feedback from today's event. Again, a big shout out to Matt Donovan. Thank you so much for an excellent session, as well as our awesome sponsor, GP Strategies. But I do want to thank you all for your time and attention today. I hope you have a wonderful day, a wonderful week, and I will see you all very soon. Bye, everybody.